Hey everyone, it's me 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀 here with East Coast Gridiron, and I got another week of freshman 15 content for y'all. New article with a full list of freshmen is up on the website eastcoastgridiron.net. You can see that right down below me there on the bottom of the screen. So be sure to check out our website for predictions, articles that I write, like the freshman 15 list, as well as any articles that our stats guru Don puts out. He's got some like bi-weekly content, really good stuff. You should check it out, including content on the quarterback hype train. Are quarterbacks too hyped coming out of college and into the NFL? But with that being said, y'all, we are going to jump right into our college football week 10 freshman of the week. One on offense, one on defense. That is the drill here. And we're going to start off with our offensive freshman of the week, hailing in Waco, Texas. Out of Baylor, that is running back Bryson Washington, who had a career day just as a true freshman. 26 carries, 196 rushing yards on the ground to go with 4. Yes, that's right. 4 touchdowns on the day. And to make that even more impressive, 150 of those yards are after contact. This guy's legit. Bryson Washington, your week 10 offensive freshman of the week across all of college football. So Washington here also added 2 catches for 22 yards on 2 targets. So he was involved a little bit in the passing game here, but in this game right here, it was a rivalry game. Big game where Baylor took on rivals TCU right up the highway, in Fort Worth. 2 teams faced off in Waco, where the last time these 2 teams played each other in McLean Stadium. No, that's right, McLean Stadium. The last time these 2 teams played there, TCU not only made the playoffs, made the national championship after beating Michigan, but when those 2 teams played there in McLean Stadium, TCU won on a walk-off field goal while the clock was running. So it's not like they had, called a timeout. They had like 20 seconds for the offense to get off the field goal unit, get out there, get set, snap the ball, make the kick. So last time it ended in dramatic fashion for TCU, and this time around, Baylor edged out a narrow win over the rivals from right up the highway. Bryson Washington played a very crucial role in that win for the Bears against the Horned Frogs, and as you can see, 4 touchdowns. He made the most of every single opportunity there, averaging a whopping 7.5 yards per attempt on 26 carries. It's crazy, right? The more volume, generally you expect that average to kind of regress towards more of the mean, right? The typical average for a player, but still on 26 carries, averaging 7.5 yards per carry. Very impressive figures. And suddenly with this performance, Washington has put himself in the conversation for being one of the top freshman running backs in the entire country, with the likes of Caden Durham out of LSU, Ahmad Hardy from Louisiana Monroe, and Isaac Brown from Louisville, both of whom Brown and Hardy were on this past week's rendition of the freshman 15 as well. Washington, though, he had those touchdowns, right? I gotta give a quick shout out though to Ahmad Hardy, who rushed for over 200 yards this past week for ULM. Great performance for him, but Bryson Washington, he was that guy. 4 touchdowns there. It's hard to beat that. Similar to our previous freshman offensive player of the week in Jaden Ball from Florida when he had 5 touchdowns against Kentucky. This time it's Bryson Washington, the running back, who steals the spotlight out of all offensive freshmen this past week. Now, one other shout I want to give out really quick for another offensive player who almost earned this nomination is Cam Shanks, a wide receiver from UAB, had over 150 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns, as well as a punt return for a touchdown. So he equals Bryson Washington's 4 touchdown total. However, Washington getting it done on the ground, getting a narrow win over a rival, I'll take that performance right there. So Now let's move on to Bryson Washington's recruiting profile, because as you can see here now next to me, he wasn't recruited. He wasn't. He was pursued obviously by programs like Baylor, but he wasn't ranked very high out of high school. On3 had him as, was the most high on him out of any of the recruiting websites, higher than 247, ESPN, or Rivals. They had him as the number 28 ranked athlete. 247 had him at 59th. Generally, 247 Sports, kind of the most well-respected and most credible recruiting outlet out there. However, On3 was slightly higher on Washington than 247 Sports was, and it looks like On3 was on to something, as Bryson Washington has now had 2 freshman 15 appearances and has really started to get a stranglehold on the starting job in the backfield out there in Waco, Texas for the Dave Aranda's Baylor Bears. Washington didn't come in with too many expectations, but in spring ball, it was pretty clear, and over the summer, I guess, that he would be a baller, right? When you get the ball in his hands, he's someone who's going to be dangerous. We've now seen that he is not only able to contribute already as a freshman, but he is a quality Power 4 starter. Not, clearly the star ratings, the national rankings didn't quite say that he would be there right away. But Washington is already turning heads in Waco, coming from humble beginnings out of Louisville, Texas. With that, Byron Washington again is our freshman offensive player of the week. And now we're going to go to the opposite side of the ball, where we have a little bit of a different prospect. Not only was our defensive freshman of the week, not only does he play in a different Power 4 conference, he hails from the SEC, but he was a very highly touted prospect coming out of high school, unlike Washington here. And that is Dylan Stewart, edge rusher from South Carolina. Now, if you didn't know, I am a student here at Texas A&M University, and unfortunately, this performance from Dylan Stewart came at my expense, as the Aggies lost on the road in Columbia 44-20 at the hands of Dylan Stewart and the South Carolina Gamecocks. Stewart had an incredible performance, 8 total pressures, a sack, 8 hurries, and 2 tackles. And he is now the reigning college football defensive freshman of the week. He set a career highs in both hurries and pressures this past weekend against Marcel Reed, against a top 10 opponent. They get a massive victory for head coach Shane Beamer. Dylan Stewart played a big part of that. Now, you may think of other defensive players on this Gamecock defense because they are loaded with talent. I think of Jalen Kilgore in the secondary. I think of Nick Manwari, also in the secondary. Very talented safety, multiple pick sixes this year. Had the game-winning pick six against LSU that got called back due to that penalty. And he also lines up off of the edge on the opposite side of Kyle Kennard, one of the most productive pass rushers in the entire country this year. Yeah, Kyle Kennard has vaulted himself into first-round conversations, and you gotta think, that's helping Dylan Stewart here in his production. You have another guy who's going to draw attention, going to draw help from the running back, maybe even a double team, so Stewart can feast. He's a physical freak. He is massive for a true freshman, but the former 5-star is getting it done in Columbia with a massive, massive game against a very talented Texas A&M offensive line, but unfortunately the Aggies were not able to cook something up to stop both Kennard and Stewart. Kennard was a little quiet on the day, but Stewart, not only with the career-high 8 pressures, but did hit home for a sack this past week. It is worth noting that he is not only a 2-time member of the freshman 15, but he is actually a 4-time member of the freshman 15. Dylan Stewart has had multiple standout performances this season, and we've taken notice here at East Coast Gridiron. Very talented player. He has also gone viral when he played against Jackson Dart and Ole Miss for his celebration, standing over Jackson Dart, that garnered a little bit of controversy that week on Twitter. Stewart was flagged once in the game against Texas A&M, but that production really outweighed any, I guess, drawbacks with the penalties there. And Stewart, very dominant, 27.6% pass rush win rate, so over a quarter of his snaps where he's rushing the passer were considered a win on his part, according to Pro Football Focus Premium Stats. Shout out to PFF. And he accounted for nearly half of South Carolina's pressures against the Aggies. I cannot stress to you enough how important it is not just to have one elite pass rusher, but to have two. Having Kyle Kennard is already dangerous enough because of how productive he is, but to have Stewart on the opposite side, still a true freshman, still coming into his own, still growing into his frame, putting on weight and muscle, for him to be able to be productive as he is right now already this early in his career is a great sign out in Columbia that they have a star. Remember, one of the last 5-star edge rushers to come into town, Jordan Burch, left in the transfer portal and is now playing at Oregon, where he is one of their more productive pass rushers. Stewart, though, looks like he could be a mainstay here in Columbia. He's not, he grew up pretty close by, South Carolina. Dylan Stewart grew up in Washington, D.C., very similar to teammate and former 5-star Nick Harbor, the wide receiver, who's also an athletic freak. Both of them from the DMV, go and play somewhere close to home in South Carolina, and they, well, more so Stewart, but Stewart is really tearing it up this season. Now, let's look at his recruiting profile because, as I mentioned earlier, very, very different from Bryson Washington. Dylan Stewart, not only a 5-star from On3, not only a 5-star according to 247 Sports, but he is a 5-star plus, which On3 constitutes 5-star plus prospect as a prospect who is a 5-star on all 4 major recruiting sites: Rivals, ESPN, 247 Sports, and On3. As you can see, As you can see on this side here, I have the On3 industry ranking graphic up for y'all, just so that way y'all can see where each recruiting outlet has those players ranked nationally by position and by state, as well as star rating and grade. No other website has all 4 of them stacked one on top of the other. And so I want y'all to see, who maybe got it right, who was higher on one prospect, who was maybe a little bit lower, because, On3, they're slightly higher than everyone else on Dylan Stewart, and they were a good bit higher on Bryson Washington, despite still having him as a 3-star prospect. Dylan Stewart here, though, very highly rated. 3 of the recruiting sites had him as a top 20 prospect, and Rivals had him as the number 24 prospect. All of them had him as the number 1 player in Washington, D.C., and all had him as a top 3 edge rusher. Dylan Stewart, y'all, you got to remember the name. Kyle Kennard is coming to his own in Columbia, and it's going to be a first-round pick, mark my words, but Dylan Stewart is the next elite pass rusher to come out of South Carolina, all right? So again, Dylan Stewart, great player, very productive already, and that really wraps it up for our Week 10 players. I know that there are already some games for Week 11 having been played and some being played right now. Be able to look out for another guy who was a defensive freshman of the week last week, and that is East Carolina safety Jamarlee Riddle. Had a pick 6 and 2 total interceptions, and just the other night, he's already logged another interception. So watch out for Jamarlee Riddle on the Week 11 edition of the Freshman 15. But remember, y'all, if you want to be in the know, if you want to know who the rising stars are in college football, the names that will impress your friends, the names that you will hear on draft day in 3 years, watch the Freshman 15, read the Freshman 15 for an even more comprehensive list as we cover all 15 guys on the article. We'll only cover 2 here in the video, but be sure to hit up eastcoastgridiron.net for anything ECG related and Freshman 15 related. I am your guy for the freshmen. With that being said, though, y'all have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your Friday night. Stay safe. And of course, let's enjoy this wonderful Week 11 slate of college football. I'll see you guys later.